Good evening, fight fans. Jay's Fight Talk here. This is it's not no punches pulled. It's not straight talk. It's an amalgamation of the two. Our other co-host Sam Walker is unavailable this evening. So tonight you've got myself, Jay's Fight Talk, my no punches pulled co-host, straight talk co-host, the host of Liam's Fight Night Picks, my good friend and statman Liam Tully. How are we, brother?
I'm all good, brother. I'm all good. Good to be back in the game. Yeah, not got Sam with us this week. He's off sunning himself somewhere, I think. But we'll hold the fort, mate. We do what we do best. We'll keep it going.
So we're going to touch on a bit of boxing, some news, some headlines, some results, some MMA. First and foremost, I just want to say congratulations to my boy Shamrock. Anybody that don't know, he's a big MMA star. That's life story reads like a movie. I don't want to touch on it because he's been asked about it until he's physically wants to vomit. But look, he's a really, really good, I don't want to say prospect because I think he's past that now. He's been fighting on the fringes, sort of regional. Then he went to Octagon, which is a European organization that's, I wouldn't say feeder for the UFC, but a lot of them do sort of make it there and then go to the UFC. He's finally been signed to the UFC. He's out of the same stable as Paddy Pimblett and Molly McCann. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled. Shamrock is coming for you all at 155. Right then, today, Liam Parro announced himself as being back. He made an absolute mess of Jonathan Navarro in Cairns. He absolutely battered him from pillar to post and basically got him or his team to call quits on the 5th, I think it was, on his stool. Where was that Liam Parro against Hitchens?
Yeah, that was
that's the sorry to cut you, but that's the kind of performance I expected against Hitchens, and he seemed to be more reserved against Hitchens, whereas today he just did what Liam Parro does best and just beat the dog shit out of someone. What's your take from the result, the fight itself?
That was the Liam Parro that beat Matisse rather than the Liam Parro that lost to Hitchens. It's the Liam Parro the two of us expected to see against Richardson Hitchens, and we're disappointed that we didn't see. So, look, it's good that he's back, but that was another one of these fantastic Aussie dinner shows that go on in really small venues that favour one corner more than others, but Liam Parro needed that. Like, you to still coin your phrase, he needed to beat the dog shit out of someone, and he spent the best part of 5 rounds doing that. Look, we talk all the time about brave corners, don't we? And corners, we're going to come on to it with your fight in a minute. Corners that just want to keep sending their man out. That was a brave corner there on this afternoon, that we're happy to see their man out. And then Liam Parro will get back to world level. We may get the Hitchens rematch. He may get Andy Cruz, etc., etc. We didn't need to see any more of that. What we saw for 5 rounds shows us why Liam Parro is fringe world level, and for me, could be a real player at 140 if he's able to keep it intact and not lose again in a fight that we expect him to do better in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not taking any glory in saying I picked Hitchens to beat him, but I do think that Parro's good enough to mix it at that level consistently. I just believe he had an off night and we didn't see the best of him. I believe if they fought again, we may see a similar result, but I don't think we'd see a similar performance. I think we'd see a totally different Liam Parro. I think I don't want to say he didn't believe in himself or have confidence in himself, but I think he was a bit worried about losing rather than worried about getting beat, if that made any sense. I don't think he's scared of losing a fight, but I think he was more bothered about the fact it was where it was and the spotlight that was on it. I think the occasion potentially got to him and made him not perform to the best. He didn't turn up. Not didn't turn up, but there was more. That wasn't. I think if Liam Parro today, the Liam Parro that boxed today, was fighting Richardson Hitchens, then I think we may have seen a different result or a different fight completely. And I think, if they fight again, as I said, we could see Hitchens win again, but I think it would be a completely different fight.
Yeah, look, how many times do we see in boxing a fighter's first world title defense is often nowhere near the standard we've seen from them leading up to it? And that's what it was from Liam Parro. Look, me and Sam done the watch along for that. And after 4 rounds, we had Parro, I think 3-1 up, both of us. Quite comfortable because he was in control early on. But then Hitchens got into his rhythm. Parro, for whatever reason, either couldn't adjust his game plan, was unwilling to adjust his game plan, or didn't know what to do. That's what it looked like in that fight. And it was a split or a majority in the end, I think I'm pretty right in saying. So there is a world where we see that fight run back. And I said all along, Liam Parrott is still a player at 140, as long as he doesn't make a mess of his comeback opponent. And when he did make a mess in the proverbial sense,
but didn't slip on the banana skin.
Look, get Eddie, be on the phone to Eddie now. He's a Matchroom signed fighter. We know they're going to do another card with Cambos. Look, Cambosis Parro is now relevant again. We know that was the plan. If Parro won the belt, it would have been Parro Cambosis. Does beating George Cambosis at this stage of his career do Liam Parro any major favours? No, but we know how boxing works. We know how fickle people are. If he beats George Cambosis, then he's beating a former, undisputed champion. That's how people will see it, even though we know what Cambosis is. So for the potential of where his career wants to go, beating Cambosis in what would be a huge Aussie grudge match, it would be Queensland against New South Wales. I have no harm in that being done.
But, I'm excited for what's next. I think he's come back with a bang. They're the type of comebacks you expect or want to see from a champion that's lost the first defense. You want to see him come back with a bang rather than fizzle out, because there were rumblings, not from any of us, but there were rumblings that he wasn't all that and he got found out. And Hitchens beats 99.9% of them in the division and probably the division above, or certainly will mix it with a lot of them in the division above. So there's no shame in that loss. And as I said, if they boxed 10 times, it could finish 5-5, But no, I'm really excited now that we've seen that from him, because it solidifies within myself what I thought. Even though I'd picked him to lose that fight, I think that he didn't give a full account of himself. And I fully expect him to get himself back to the point where it's either a rematch or, if the champion's changed, he's challenging for the belt within the next 12 months.
Completely agree, mate. Completely agree.
I mean, for me, we saw one of the top 3 knockouts of the year so far for me. Norman Jr. Against Sasaki. There's not often, and I've got personal friends and family that have been injured in boxing. I've got family that have a brain injury through boxing, and I've got a personal friend that has had an injury caused during a fight. Shout out John Joe Finnegan, my boy. But look, Brian Norman Jr. Was the away fighter, even though he was sort of the home fighter. And he knocked out Sasaki. Like, you don't see many flatlines like that at those type of weight, in those weight divisions. We see that at super middleweight up, really. You don't really see, you see knockouts, TKOs and stoppages, but you don't see people getting flatlined like that. And that was the epitome of someone getting flatlined, laid out, eyes wide open, legs twitching, and the arena went silent. It was one of those eerie moments where for a split second you think, shit, man, he's hurt bad. I know getting knocked out in general is bad enough. I've been knocked out a couple of times myself, but that was more than just a knockout. That was, for a split, I got that feeling in my tummy, when you get like butterflies. I thought, fuck, man, he's really hurt. What do you reckon about the performance? What do you think it does for him moving forward? Good evening, DJ Pat. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Okay. So Pat, fair enough. Well, look, you could still see that Cambosis fight for him. You could tell from the first minute of this fight in Japan last Thursday that it was a matter of when Norman knocks him out, not if that makes sense. You could just tell from almost the first exchange that Norman Jr. is 2 levels above Sasaki. And like you say, when the stoppage came in the 5th, firstly, fantastic combination, done everything it should have done. Let's, praise the shots that finished it first, but then straight away you're going, his legs twitching, he ain't moving. And then you're waiting for the doctors to get in. And again, this is where we praise the British Board of Control. They don't get a lot right, but one thing that is right in this country is how quickly medical attention gets to fighters when it's needed. There was a good 10-ish seconds, wasn't there, where everyone's looking for where's the doctor.
Nobody knew what were going on. Nobody knew what was going on.
See his legs twitching. Not even the ref knew what to do, and that's also a worry when you got a referee that almost looks like he froze. Is it what we expected? Yes. Does it make me a bit more upset that we didn't see him fight Boots? It does, because I feel like that would have been a fantastic fight. It's just one of those now with Brian Norman. He's in the position, because of himself and because of his trainer, also known as his dad, he's in the position of doing a Devin Haney and a Tio Lopez, where he prices himself out of the fights that he wants. We've got all these people saying that he is the best 147, and if Boots stayed at one they fought, he would have destroyed Boots, X, Y, and Z. All the hyperbole doesn't matter, because Boots has moved up, because Norman Senior priced his son out of the fight last November. That's the reality. We've heard it from more than one source, and even Brian Norman, he hasn't said directly, my dad's screwed.
Pretty much, Anna. My dad's a gobshite and he's priced us out of.
I would have handled things differently. So, look, if you are as good as people say you are, as your dad believes, mop up 147 now minus Boots.
Clean up. Yeah.
And then go and fight him at 154 once the likes of Madrimov, Boachuk, Crawford, etc. have moved on. Because once they move on to 154, it's going to be your Conor Benns, your Brian Normans, your Mario Barrioses, etc. that move up under the next challenge. So now go and take on Barrios. Go and pick up that WBC belt. See what happens with the vacant IBF belt between Abdullah Mason and Sam Noakes, and go and fight. No, that's not lower weight, sorry. See what happens with that IBF belt and pick that up as well. You know, make a statement now. Apparently the path is now clear for Norman at 147. We'll go and make that statement.
It is, and I was going to talk about this later, but they reckon that Conor Benn is next for the winner of Pacquiao Barrios. So could we potentially see Conor Benn challenge Norman Jr.?
Well, for me, Conor Benn beats Barrios. From what we saw from Mario Barrios and the Jake Paul Tyson charade.
I think so, yeah. I think he'd stop him.
He's the weakest champion at 147, and Conor Benn beats him. And then we get Conor Benn and Norman, which is an interesting fight. It's a hard life.
I think Conor Benn's best chance in a fight like that is a stoppage. Catching him, he's not outboxing the likes of Norman. Absolutely not for me. Excuse me. I'd stake my shaky reputation on him losing that fight, Conor Benn, and that's and we back the Brit. We always have done, but unfortunately, I think that I would lean towards Norman Jr. in that fight.
I want to reserve judgment until I see Conor Benn back down at his natural weight. It's been so long.
Oh, he gets one fucking press pass and he fucking starts going all fucking fence sitting.
Not fencing. What I'm saying is, we always knew that he was going to get outmanned, wasn't he, against Chris Eubank, and that's what happened. Is that like a Joey kangaroo or something, mate?
No, that's me reeling in a fucking fish because you bit, mate, straight away.
I did.
It's a whopper.
We knew that he would struggle against Eubank down the stretch, and that is kind of what happened. Eubank's size, even though he was dehydrated as anything, played a factor down the backstretch of that fight. Even at 154, it's still outside, for me, of Conor's natural weight. Getting back down to 147, if he handles Barrios like we think he does, then the Norman Jr. fight is intriguing. If he scrapes a decision against Barrios, then you make Norman a huge favourite. That's the way it's going, isn't it, mate? Look, 147's become more intriguing again. It's not a blue ribbon division like it has been for years at the moment. That, unfortunately, is something 147's lost. But there's some intriguing matchups there. Look, Paddy Donovan and Lewis Crocker are fighting their rematch. Frank Smith was at Windsor Park today. I'm sure you saw his social media post. The IBF has said that when that rematch gets announced, they're putting their vacant belt on it. Look, a chance for, if you can't get the Barrios Pacquiao winner for whatever reason, a chance to fight Paddy Donovan or Lewis Crocker, for the IBF belt in an all British and Irish fight. That's big as well for Conor. So, look, it's good to see him talking, just coming on to Conor, last week on Conor. It's good to see him talking about wanting to get it on with the 147 champions, but he's not looking like he's lost any of the size he put on for the Eubank fight, if that makes sense. He's still looking set. So if he wants to get down to 147, it needs to be now. He needs to start making a drop.
Yeah, and I've got a really awful feeling, right, that there's been some skullduggery going on in the background, because the path was cleared for Ben Eubank Jr. too. That was the fight we were going to see later on this year, September, October time. Okay. Then early last week, Conor Benn's name is then bandied about as the potential winner of Pacquiao versus Barrios over here, a big fight. Norman Jr., so Conor Benn's now being pushed back into the 147 picture. Okay. Less than 24 hours later, the British Boxing Board of Control want to speak to Christopher Livingston Eubank Jr. about making weight for the fight by using a sauna. Now, we all saw the fact that he used a sauna, 48 hours, 24 hours before the original fight. The British Boxing Board of Control sanctioned that fight. It just feels as though, and obviously I've got no proof, and this is pure speculation and assumption on my part. We've not even had a conversation about this off camera, but it feels like dark forces at work have potentially egged the British Boxing Board of Control on to keep Christopher Livingston Eubank Jr. tied up in legal wrangles while, should I say, their man gets his path cleared to picking up a belt at 147, because they know he's not going to beat Eubank Jr. in a rematch. I think we all know that he's not going to beat Eubank Jr. in a rematch. I mean, is it coincidence? It just seems very coincidental for me, and I'm not a strong believer in coincidences. Or am I reading way too much into the scenario?
Mate, I think you need to start writing novels, because that's a hell of a plot line you come up with. No, look, I can see where you're coming from. Look, the biggest poo-poo to the rematch was Turkey coming out saying it's going to be the last Saturday of September at Wembley, and then you go and look, and Oasis are playing on that night. So it's not going to be at Wembley on that Saturday. Nope. That kind of, we'll come on to Turkey and some of his exploits later, I'm sure. Yeah. We don't need to see the rematch. The only reason we're getting the rematch is for financial reasons. The same reason we
I'm not interested in the rematch.
Okay, family names, of course, but financial as well. Like we said in the build-up, you put different surnames on even one of those blokes, they would have never have fought. So am I glad to hear Conor Benn's name more in the band of fighters at his natural weight? Yes, I am, but the Board of Control knew at the same time as us, because Eubank put his weight cut up on YouTube the morning of the fight. So he didn't decide to hide it.
Well, I thought they were going to pull him. I thought, oh shit, they're going to pull him now. But by the letter of the law, they should have pulled him. Thanks for joining us.
Paul Butler's opponent, Casemiro, got pulled, didn't he, from a world title fight for using a sauna.
Hi, Handish Revolt. Thanks for joining us. We're just talking. We were just coming off Conor Benn potentially fighting for a world title at 147, and the fact that Chris Eubank Jr. Has got to go up in front of the board and explain why he used the sauna. I don't understand why this has come out now. If they were that bothered, they shouldn't.
6 weeks.
Yeah, they shouldn't have let him go into that fight. You can't. The toothpaste is out of the tube. It's not going back in. So for me, that's where I get my pessimism from. That's why I'm looking at has somebody reported him in. I don't know, man. It just feels too coincidental for me that it's like tied Chris Eubank Jr. up now and it clears the pathway for Conor Benn. But as you said, Conor Benn don't look like he's working on getting down to 147 to me. It looks like he's carrying 160 around, 154, 160. So we'll see. I think that'll work itself out in the coming weeks, I think. I think we'll get to know more as we get towards September, October. Right. Saturday. The homecoming Olympic gold medalist, Galal Yafai. I think, now I can't remember, I don't think I said he'd lose, but I said there was a potential he could lose if he took his eye off the ball. I didn't expect it to be as easy as it was for Rodriguez, and I'm going to say that. I'm going to say it was an easy night for Rodriguez. He fought at his own pace. The first jab he seemed to hit Yafai with sort of stunned him. Now I'm thinking, not us, but let's say us collectively. Did we, evening brother, Mad Mitch TV, get yourselves across there if you want any one of one watches. He makes watches. I ain't got mine on at the moment. I know Liam's going to be getting one soon. And any rare sneakers, get yourself over to my boy Mad Mitch or drop me a DM. I will put you in touch. Good evening, brother. Did we collectively read too much into the way he dismantled Sonny Edwards and think that I don't mean this as though we thought he was better than he was, because we know how good he is, but did we think he was ready for the type of challenges off the bat? Because look, Sonny Edwards was half out the door. He was doing more commentary gigs than anything else. He's managing fighters. He's got his own little stable. He's doing bits and bats of commentary work, and he was half out the door. That wasn't Sonny Edwards. That was a shell of Sonny Edwards. I'm not saying your fight won't beat him in his pomp, but for me, I think when he's on it, it's a different fight. Did we think too much of your fight at this point? I think he's only 10 fights in or something, isn't he? He's not many fights in, is he?
That was his 10th on Saturday.
And he got absolutely dismantled. I'd have pulled him out in about round 7. What do you think about the night in its entirety for Mr. Yafai?
A horror show. He probably never wants to see the BP Pulse Arena again in his life, because that was, from, like you say, from the very opening seconds of that fight, it was just a horror show, and it never got any better for him. To answer your question about did we all think he was ready sooner than he is for tests, it's difficult to say, because whilst you're talking about, it was just, it's difficult to say, but whilst you're talking about, Sonny was half out the door, etc., Sonny was a former world champion who gave a very good account of himself against Bam Rodriguez, but we all know the path that Bam's on.
Yeah.
So in that sense, right step up. Also, WBC interim champion he was, so he had to fight. We couldn't see him going back down to domestic level. It had to be someone of world level. I just think it was the wrong game plan from McCracken. Not often you can say that about Robert McCracken. He had the wrong game plan for his fighter, and he just seemed to be happy to send Galal
to
out
fight him
round after round.
Instead of boxing.
Round after round. Without ever looking like he was going to turn it around.
Change,
so people on social media were...
Sorry, go on.
People on social media were comparing it to the beating that Fabio was taking from Hooney a few weeks ago, but they left him in there. It was nothing like that. Fabio had moments in the early rounds of the fight, and he was still competitive.
Fabio was never getting beaten up in that fight. He was getting beaten to the punch. He was a little bit slower. He was getting clipped, but there was times in that fight where Yafai was getting beaten up. I don't want to say
that's what I was about to say,
but he was getting beaten up.
Look, he was taking shots that he shouldn't have to take. And you say round 7. I think from round 8, when I was watching it back, I was expecting to see the towel come in at any points, if that makes sense. Expecting, and hand history of Volks just made my next point. Rodriguez, every time he steps up, he's fallen short. So if you're Matchroom, if you're team your fight, it makes sense. Oh, look, we've got the nearly man. If we win this, then we're going to get the crack at the main belt. Rodriguez has just had the night of his life. Just like
Lara, I was
did
just about to say that when you finished. Lara, they brought him over as a
just
name.
Like that. Yeah, they brought him over as a name. But again, Mexican boxers, matchroom fighters, kryptonite. It's happened again. Eddie Hearn is probably going to get rid of all his Mexican contacts and never want to work with them again. I am joking. The rebuild for Yafai is the interesting thing, because as we've said before, these lower weight classes lack the strength and depth that you get from lightweight, welterweight, etc., etc. So if he drops back down to a domestic level, it's almost too much of a drop back down, if that makes sense. He needs to sort of stay at the fringe of world level, but it needs to be, well, not a puncher for starters. I mean, Rodriguez, like you say, was hitting him from pillar to post. It needs to be somewhat, and then he's going to be able to outbox, but he can't afford to drop down to domestic level because it's too much of a fall off.
Can I say something that's probably going to get me a load of stick, but I would not be surprised if we don't see him again.
That's the other thing.
He's not young. He's what, 31? He's not a kid. He's not young. His brother didn't take defeat very well. I'm not saying you have to accept defeat and it'd be great, but Cal was never the same when he lost, was he? Ever?
No.
No. Isn't there another brother? Oh, no, he's already retired, hasn't he? Galal's the last one, isn't he?
Yeah.
There was Gamal.
Gamal's the last one.
Gamal who lost to Gavin McDonnell. Didn't he? Gavin McDonnell beat Gamal.
You got, Kai, Gamal, Galal. Yeah,
it's a mouthful. We're just going to talk about the other fights. But, yeah, look, like you say, dropping down to domestic levels, not an option for him. It's too high profile. His resume is too good for him to be then now fighting for British titles and European titles. I think he maybe a European, maybe, or a fringe, an IBO, something like that. But again, I would not be surprised if we do not see Mr. Yafai box again. Not because he's scared, not because he's worried, but just because, he's an Olympic gold medalist. He's made some decent money, I assume. I believe that the three brothers have got investments collectively in and around the Birmingham area, business interests, etc. There's easier ways of earning money than getting punched in the head. And he's fought at the top level, amateur and professional. He's done things that people like me and you can only dream of. He's represented, his country at the Olympics. He's won a gold medal. He's boxed for a world title, albeit an interim. He still can go down as a world champion. Is he going to be able to climb that mountain again? What I will say, and Robert McCracken has guided some fighters, he guided Carl Froch, for example. He was heavily involved in Anthony Joshua. A lot of the Team GB has been involved in. What I didn't like at the weekend is we didn't see a change of tactic. We never saw a change of tactic. No plan B or C. Yes, rope-a-dope, how we doing, big lad? Thanks for joining us. And that seems to be a Robert McCracken thing. We saw it with Carl Froch against Jermaine Taylor. Just kept doing the same thing over and over again. Luckily, Jermaine Taylor gassed and didn't recover. But Froch was doing the same thing. Did it against Andre Ward. Just forward. And
plodding forwards, no straight lines, no sideways, no nothing.
George Groves won. He was just walking forward, getting pinged from pillar to post, and then George gassed a little bit. Carl jumped on him. But there's never a change of tactic. There's a change in scenario and circumstance within the fight as it evolves. But in terms of, like, as you said, round 7 or 8, you could have just pulled him out of there because he was never going to win that fight. From then on, you could see that he'd even lost that puncher's chance for me.
He didn't even have a puncher's chance. Let's be brutally honest. He didn't even have a puncher's chance. That's the thing. You could just tell it was just beaten to the punch, sloppy, not strong enough, getting dominated, getting pushed back. It just wasn't a good night for
you. And, let's see if he can climb that mountain again because, he's got all the skills. And I like to see how he rebuilds after the defeat, but I will put it out there that I'm not sure whether we will see him do that. And I will reiterate, that's not because I don't believe that he's got it in him to do it, but I'm thinking he might just think, I can't be asked. Do you know what I mean? I can't be asked. But we'll see. He gets the best of luck from us here on the channel. This was my favourite fight on the card. I enjoyed this fight. Conor Walker boxing Liam Taylor, the Battle of Manchester as such. I know one of them's not from Manchester, but it was Jamie Moore and his team against Steve Mailer, Terry Flanagan's coach.
Yeah.
And for a few rounds, Liam Taylor looked like he was leading the dance, and Conor Walker just kept at it, and then bam, just took over. What were your take on that 7th round stoppage for the British welterweight championship, and what do you believe's next for both of the combatants?
Conor Walker doing Conor Walker things. Down in the fight. Okay, not as badly as he was when he won it in January against Harry Scarf, but he was down in the fight for me. I think there was maybe a round in it, but he wasn't in control. Liam Taylor was establishing his jab, beating him with the punch, and then Conor Walker just exploded into life again. And Liam Taylor you could tell from how he was when he fell that he was going to struggle to make the 10 count. It would have to be a generous 10 count, shall we say, for him to beat it. But look, Conor Walker is quickly becoming a must-watch fighter at British level. I mean, even when he fought and lost to Lewis Crocker, that was a great fight. Yeah. He was in that fight. He was unlucky on the night, but it was his style that made it such a good fight. I honestly think Conor Walker now, Sam Egginson. I think we're going to see Conor Walker and Sam Egginson.
I was thinking Esserman.
I think Esserman's a step ahead of him, mate. Esserman's going to want to stay on the fringe world level. He'll see coming down for the British.
Do you think so? I thought he might just want the British.
Yeah. He may want... Echo may want the British back for the second time, but for me, I think he's going to want to stay on that WBO gravy train because you never know what's going to happen with the champion and see what happens there. I think it will be Sam Egginton. Egginton's just come off of a good win against Lee Cutler on the Whittaker Cameron rematch. That's the fight over Easter weekend. It makes sense. Sam Egginton's been there, done that, got the t-shirt.
Savage.
Both men have one gear.
Forward.
And yes, Sam is. I mean, we say Sam's at the end of his career. Sam's only
29,
it's
mad, isn't it? Even though he's such a young guy still.
40 fights. You know, they both go forward. I hope that's the fight we get next. For Liam Taylor, does he still want to carry on? I know that's a harsh thing to say, and we don't retire anyone, but he's 34. He's 28-3 now. He looks good against a certain level of opponent, but he's lost now to Conor Walker for the British, David Avanesian for the European, which I forgot about until I was looking, and Tyrone Nurse for the English.
I was at that fight. Yeah.
So there you go. He's never, unfortunately, he's always fallen short when he's got to a certain level. And at 34, is he going to want to go back down doing the 6 rounders and dinner shows before he gets a TV opportunity? Look, he stayed on his feet. There's every chance he was going to win it on points. But as we've seen this month with other fights, it doesn't work like that. It takes one shot to change a fight. And Conor Walker, for the second time this year, nowhere near as much trouble as he was in January against Scarf, but got himself out of trouble in a split second. And that is what makes a superstar. And that's why Eddie Hearn, off the back of that fight, signed him to a contract.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see what's next for the champion. I'd like to see him win that title outright. Right, this is a strange one for me. Peter McGrail. Can I just say I've never seen a more awkward scene than his brother and Shabazz Massoud sat next to each other. McGrail didn't even look at him. It was so awkward.
No.
Whoever put that together is a dick, because that could have gone west quick. Right. How many rounds did you give Baluta in that fight? Honestly.
3.
I gave him 2.
3.
Right, so let's say 3 at a push. Where the hell did the British referee judge get 90? Was it Bob Williams? 95-95?
Yeah.
Where'd that score? I've watched it 3 times now because I know sometimes we do lives, watch-alongs, don't we? And sometimes we get caught up in it and our scorecards are mad. Was it Beterbiev Bivol won? I had Beterbiev losing that by about 9 rounds. When I watched it back, I still think Bivol won the first one. I'm never, ever going to change my mind on that. But it wasn't as wide as I'd first given. We didn't do a live, but I was watching... What was I watching at the same? I was watching the UFC. So I had 2 screens. I had my iPad and my computer on at the same time, or TV, whatever. So I'm not fully concentrating. Watched it again, and I thought, nah, I got it right the first time. And I watched it this morning. And I believe we're at a point now with referees, right? And I'll go back to the fight in a minute. But I think we're at a point now that there's that many terrible scorecards that influence decisions that refereeing as a whole now needs looking at. We've used this analogy before. If a football referee in the Premier League makes a shocking mistake, right, or a bad decision, he gets dropped down the league, so he gets demoted to the Championship or League One or even League Two. And he's got to sort of earn or prove that he is of a level and of a standard. And I believe that we are losing the standard of referee and judging. Because to score that fight 95-95 as an experienced referee and judge, I also believe that referees should be referees and judges should be judges. I think there should be a clear definition between the two. And there should be clear scoring criteria, and it should be adhered to. And if you make a decision like that, you should have to question. You should be questioned on it. No, I don't mean publicly, like you should have to come out and do a press conference, but you should have to go up in front of the board and watch the fight with the board, rescore it, and explain how you reached 95-95, because that could have turned. You know, McGrail could have got a loss or a draw on his record for no reason really, other than Bob Williams, was he not watching the fight? I did written his scorecard out beforehand. I'm obviously being I'm saying this for
I know
comedic
what you
effect.
mean,
I'm
though.
not being serious or making any accusations, but that is a terrible scorecard.
Yeah, right. So I've on BoxRec while you were talking. This is according to BoxRec's records, the 308th fight that Bob Williams has judged in his career. He's refereed over 1,100 fights. So we're not talking about a young, up and coming official who's still, a bit wet behind the ears and make a mistake. I mean, look, in recent times, he's been the judge for Martin Bacoli and Ajagba, Liam Davis and Kurt Walker, Fabio Wardley's fight against Hooney. How did he have that? He had that the same way as everyone did. He's a regular judge that normally, on the whole, doesn't do a bad job and isn't someone normally you can accuse of home cooking. What makes this even more bizarre is it just doesn't make sense. So I came into So I came in watching that fight knowing it was a majority decision. So I'm sitting there watching it going, okay, it's going to be Beluta's going to come and do what I've sat there watching Beluta do in an arena before. He's going to make it tough for the Brit. He might have a case to think he's won. I got to round 6 and I looked down at my scorecard.
Is there going to be a couple of knockdowns or something?
Is Beluta going to win every round now to the end? I was like, what the fuck's going on? Look, did he have his moments? Absolutely. Yeah. But did Peter McGrail do the cleaner, effective, more accurate work for longer periods in a fight? Also, absolutely. So for me, I had it 97-93, which is what the other two judges had it.
I had it 98-92, something like that. I had it one round.
Yeah, it's difficult because we've just praised. Well, I've just given Bob Williams his dues for the way that he didn't allow Liam Taylor to carry on after he obviously couldn't against Conor Walker. So he's done that in that fight, but yet the fight before that, he's sitting there turning in a scorecard that doesn't stack up. Like we say, it won't get talked about in the same way as some other howlers do because McGrail still got his hand raised. But all it would have taken is one other judge having a swing, 96-94 swing, and it's a majority draw or Belusa win, depending on what happens. Like, it shouldn't not be spoken about and swept under the carpet, which we know Robert Smith loves to do with his massive fucking broom with a lot of issues. It still should be spoken about. I wouldn't go as far as to say referees and judges need to be separate, but I would say this. If on one fight night you are there and you're judging, you are just a judge.
Yeah, that's what, separated the two. Okay.
Bob Williams ref, I've just looked again. He ref 2 fights on the before the bell, so what's on YouTube. Judged that one and then refereed the co-main. That's a lot of action in one night. And yes, that's what they're paid for. Yes, he's one of the better officials we've got. But for me, you're either a judge for the night or a referee for the night. Doing both is blurring lines.
And I also think that judging a fight sat down ringside or refereeing a fight, your adrenaline's pumping, you're exerting yourself, you're physically and mentally exerting yourself to then have to go sit down and have your concentration levels at their peak is impossible to do if you've just refereed. Imagine if it's a dirty fight and you're splitting people, you're taking points, you've given out warnings, there's this, there's that. You can't not be mentally exhausted after that. For you then to have to go and judge a fight where you've got to be on it, it's impossible. It's physically impossible. So for me, I've said this before, I would love nothing better than to be a boxing judge. Unfortunately, at my age, I'm nearly 50, it takes too long. And it doesn't take too long because it's so intricate and it just takes so long because they assess you on about 50 fights. But you're getting assessed by the same people that are making the mistakes week in, week out. So is that not a flawed model? I just think it needs overhauling. But that's boxing in general, isn't it? That's the British Boxing Board of Control for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Mate, you have just like you said, you've just summed up the board full stop. It's not just, unfortunately, it's not just a new issue. It's an issue that we've had for years.
I'm nearly 50, right? And I know that's very hard to believe, but I am. And if I joined the British Boxing Board of Control, I would be one of the youngest by about 25 years. They are all old white men. And the colour's irrelevant, but they're all from a certain generation, and they all do things a certain way, and it's their way or the highway, and it's just the old boys network, and it's like a closed network, and they won't diversify, they won't change, they won't evolve. And I just think a lot of the processes are draconian. I believe that their scoring model is also flawed now, and we're seeing more and more shitty scorecards, with more regularity. And it just by pure luck, McGrail got the win. But as you said, a couple of rounds either way, and he could have got a majority draw or even a loss in a fight that he hands down won for me, and that's the problem. He didn't get out of
coasting isn't the right word.
Second gear.
He was comfortable, mate. He didn't need to. He didn't need to because he was comfortable, and that's what it's all about.
Possibly, yeah. I still think judging should be done away, like VAR, on screens with several camera views and no crowd noise.
I hear what Hand History Volt's saying, but my argument to this is being referees have enough going on. Yes, I know referees in Britain score 4, 6, and 8 rounders. I know that happens.
And 10s. They do English titles and stuff, don't they?
Yeah, but how often do we see some interesting scorecards when it's a referee scoring it? I think they have enough to worry about without them worrying about being the fourth official, especially if they know it's...
Why do they not do five people instead of 3? They do it in a studio somewhere, or in a container or a truck, right? They have a live feed with several camera angles, like we see as fans. No crowd noise, no commentary, and then similar to the Olympics. Well, they changed it at the Olympics, but
used to be 5.
Yeah, but if you have 5, then you can take 3 of the 5, but then you'll see a pattern, then won't you? Whereas when it's 3, you normally have 2 that have it similar and 1 that has it different. So there's no rhyme or reason. Yeah. Look, it needs overhauling. How they do it now don't work. You've got them sat ringside watching it, so you only get a certain view. So you see punches that aren't punches, punches that are blocked that look like punches, punches that hit the gloves and knock the head back. If you're looking at that from behind, that looks like he's being caught with an uppercut. Look, the result was correct, but only just. And for me, that's a massive problem. So I'd like to see the British Boxing Board of Control make some changes sooner rather than later.
One day, mate. One day they will.
Fingers crossed. Pat Brown. I mean, what do we do with Pat Brown? Another early win. I think it was Daku, was it his opponent, or Duka?
Yeah.
Duka. Nice uppercut, that. Speaking of uppercuts.
Look, he looks more relaxed and calm. I mean, of course, he was going to look better than he did on his debut when he was given main event slot in Altrincham, which is home for him. But you could see he was starting. We speak, don't we? We spoke about with Andy Cruz recently and different fighters about taking time to adjust to the pro style after being an amateur. Now, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that Pat Brown is there yet, but we can already see the adjustments being made, can't we? And the best bonus is he's back out next weekend in Manchester, and he's actually got to step up. I'm just going to get his opponent up. He's actually got someone I'm pretty sure has at least fought for an English title before, and he's only in his 3rd fight. Give me a second.
I like that. I like the fact that they're putting him in, testing him.
I like they are testing him, and that's how it should be. Because what is he going to learn from knocking over fighters like he did on Saturday? He's fighting. Okay, Lewis Oxford 6-2. He has fought for an English title before. It's not the best, but it's still a winning record as opposed. So he's lost to John Hedges. That's why we recognise him. He lost to John Hedges for the English title last year on the Fisher Babbage flipping Yatesy fight that was actually in the event. That's what at least there's something there. He's not a losing record. Since then, he's gone on and won a couple since. We'll get questions answered about Pat Brown, and I like it because we've had conversations on and off camera with Sam as well, saying how quickly is Pat Brown going to move? What are they going to do? He's 28, I think he is. He's not the youngest, still in his 20s, but he's not the youngest in boxing terms. Yeah. So, get him out. If he gets through Lewis Oxford quickly, get him out again twice more this year, and then you want to see him in for an English title towards the start of 2026. That's where you want to go with him.
Who's the British cruiser champ? Who's the British champ? Cruiser. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he's ready for him yet. But he's not, if he wins in English, I would put him in with someone like Isaac Chamberlain next. After that,
that's what I'm leaning towards. I'm saying Keep him moving at a good lick this year, and then someone like Isaac Chamberlain the start of next year would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm excited for Pat Brown. Okay, some of the headlines then, and this one for me has absolutely bamboozled me. Alexander Usyk has parted ways with his long-term. Was he manager and advisor? What was
Promoter as
it?
well.
Yeah, Alex
Krasiev was his promoter.
What's going on? He's been with him all his career, and then they haven't said why.
Nope.
They've just said he's no more. Thanks for the memories. What the fuck's going on there?
When I first saw
his last fight.
Yeah. When I first saw this on Sunday, I had to check. Remember that fake Michael Benson account that was around when Turkey first got Benson to sell his soul? I had to check it wasn't that at first. I was like, oh, are we being... And then it's literally going everywhere and it's getting reported by DAZN and stuff. And you go, fucking hell.
What's going on?
Like you say, it's not like a fighter leaving. It's not like when... Eddie Hearn loses, say when he lost Lawrence Okoli. It's not like that. Yes, okay, taking him from the start, but it wasn't that deep a relationship. Lawrence,
these are like
that's what I mean.
Friends.
So Krasiev used to be on the Ukrainian amateur team as an advisor or whatever. So they first met there. The only thing I can think is that Usyk's last 2 fights are mapped out. So he's got Dubois and then he's got Parker. So Krasiev isn't needed anymore, but
but still, man, he's part of his team. I mean, he didn't need him for the Fury fights. They made themselves,
Usyk hasn't said anything though. Usyk himself hasn't said anything. Krasiev put out that lovely photo of them the day he won the World Boxing Super Series, and has said, "Thank you so much for the memories. I will always love you, my friend," or something along those lines. But Usyk himself, which obviously he's balls deep into a training camp to become 2 times undisputed. But nothing from Usyk. I do think there's more to it than meets the eye, and it's another one of those things you don't want to speculate on until you know what the reasons are behind it.
Falling out, like a falling out, like a not physical, but like a friendship breakdown.
Possibly not with Usyk, but with the team. I wonder if it's not necessarily Alexander, but the team. And Krasiev's decided I don't need this, and he's cut the ties.
It's a shock for me, and I think Usyk's professional enough for it not to make any difference to him come fight night. I believe that he could turn up on his own, and he's a consummate professional. But it's not good, is it, to have this, because we've never had anything within an Usyk camp before. There's never been, this has happened, that's happened, rumblings. There's never rumour. There's never any headlines. This is the first headline we've had from an Usyk camp, and it's ever. And if I'd have said to you, he's gonna, they're gonna part ways before the Dubois fight, you'd have laughed if I'd have said that. You'd have said, nah, no chance. And here we are. It's just real strange. For me, I thought they would have, even if I thought they'd have maybe made an excuse and just not said anything to not cause any issue.
This is why I'm leaning a bit more towards. I agree, Dave. I agree. There's bigger.
Yeah, but Papachenko was on the periphery, wasn't he? Krasic has been his mouthpiece for a lot of years.
I think it makes absolutely zero difference. Usyk beats Dubois however he wants next month.
Yeah, as I've just said.
Yeah,
I just think
I agree with you, I don't think it makes any difference, but like I said, I had to check it wasn't parody accounts at first on Sunday, because we see news in this sport all the time, and usually it's plausible, but that's something you wouldn't have expected in a million years. But I don't think it's going to be a determining factor in this fight. But hey, at least Team Dubois have something other than the low blow to sort of home in on now for the next 3 weeks. You've lost Krasiek because the low blow story is getting a bit tiresome.
Oh, I'm sick of hearing it. That is most of the results. We're going to do another live out with some predictions. So I think we'll move on to MMA for the MMA fans. We had a decent we've got a really good UFC card this weekend. But we had a pretty decent UFC fight card last week. And 1 second, because she thinks a bet lost. But I cashed it out. My missus picked every fight, bar Oban Elliott. So yeah, we lost. Oh, what a
What a
shame.
shame.
It's all right.
I was gutted for you, mate.
Yeah, but JFT cashed out before Oban Elliott threw a fucking shot. Don't worry about that. It's not the first time. Honest to God, she's so lucky. I just read names out, and she'll give me the name.
Pick the names.
And two of the fights were like outsiders, 3-1 outsiders, and the one favourite or the heavy favourite, Oban Elliott, lost. But I mean, there were some great fights on that card. Let me pull them up. I mean, the main event itself, I picked Khalil Roundtree to win. I had a 5-fight accumulator, and he let me down. I had him by stoppage, and he nearly got a stoppage. But that UFC card for me was a really good. I mean, the main card we saw Oralbai beat Musiev by submission. Nazim Sadikov. Wow. I mean, they both got a bonus. Him and Motta, they got all the bonuses. He gave him $100,000 each. Curtis Blades back in the winning column, or with another win, should I say, got a decision against Kuniev. Rafael Fiziev was the outsider in this fight.
Yeah, it was.
Bahamondes has been on fire recently and was expected to win that fight, bearing in mind that Fiziev lost his last 3, I want to say. I think he's lost his last 3. Fiziev turned up, man. And then in the main event, Jamal Hill. How did he ever win a world title? He has turned dog shit. He's rubbish. I'm sorry, man. He's rubbish. Because no disrespect to Khalil Roundtree, he has dramatically improved since he went to Tiger Muay Thai and learned kickboxing, right? But he was... Ooh, did you see how it started? He just stood there, Khalil Roundtree, and just looked at him like, what? And then like sauntered towards him and then took a stance. Jamal Hill barely landed a punch or kick on him all night, and his leg was chewed up. He could barely stand on it towards the end of that fight. I mean, what's gone on with Jamal Hill?
We talk all the time about fighters that either lose a world title shot or lose their world championship, and they're never the same again.
Yep.
Jamal Hill is a living, breathing embodiment of exactly that, because even when he had an opportunity to win his title back at UFC 300, he got stopped quite convincingly. And on Saturday night with this, like you say, look, Khalil Roundtree is no world beater. He gets beaten by the top guys in the light heavyweight division, as he has been. And for me, that will continue to happen. But like you say, he chewed up Hill's leg. He was effective with his strikes. He didn't waste anything. The only thing that's missing from this performance is the stoppage, because it was one of the most dominant 25 minutes of UFC action I've seen for quite a while. And, if you said to me, one of these guys, if you said to someone that's never watched MMA before, one of these two guys was the champion of this division not 18 months ago, they'd say it was Khalil Roundtree. You could not tell an outsider that Jamal Hill is a former champion. Regardless of how long that run was, he's a former champion.
Within a minute of that fight starting, I had picked Khalil Roundtree to win, but I had him by stoppage. But within a minute of that first round, I knew that the only chance Jamal Hill had in that fight is if Khalil Roundtree took his eye off the ball and got clipped. You could see that he was never going to outstrike him. Khalil was significantly shorter in length of range and height.
Everything, yeah.
Jamal wasn't throwing kicks. He wasn't trying to fight at range. He was just following him round, getting peppered by kicks. Those calf kicks were unreal, man. Those calf kicks.
They don't make your mind hurt just watching it. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jamal was trying to keep a poker face, but you could see he was unsteady on it. That his base had gone. He didn't try any takedowns. Like you said, the fact that he was a world champion 18 months ago is laughable off the back of his recent performances. Has he got to the point where he's earned enough money to not be as motivated? Because that's what it feels like for me, that Jamal Hill fights half-assed now.
Mate, I don't know. Jamal Hill's always had that half-assed, why the fuck am I here attitude about him. But
Yeah,
it's
I
just
get that.
become
Yeah.
exacerbated even more in recent times. Dane is cutthroat. Dane is brutal. If fighters don't deliver, they get cut.
Think he'll cut him?
I'm not saying he'll cut him now, but I'm saying it might be a tap
He
on the
loses
shoulder
again.
saying, look, you're going to go on the early prelims of a fight night next, or the prelims of a fight night. You deliver, or...
Well, look, he was unbeaten. He was unbeaten, till Paul Craig got his arm.
Yeah, but mate, you see my point. Dane is always business model, and why the UFC thrives like it does is because Dana is ruthless when fighters stop performing for him. We're not talking about a Tony Ferguson type that deserved. No one wanted to see Tony lose the amount of fights he did, but we understood why it was happening because of his legacy. Jamal Hill doesn't deserve that. It's 4 on the skin now. If it becomes 5, I cut him, mate. And I know that sounds ruthless, but all you're doing is turning people off. Khalil, some people that don't watch MMA very often will have turned that main event off on Saturday.
Yeah.
Because it was that one-sided and that dominant. I appreciated it because I love my martial arts like you do, but you're not going to attract a new fan base when it's that much of a one-sided beatdown. So it is a order from Dana or Hunter and say, you're going on the prelims of an Apex card, you deliver here or see you later. It will be, I would be brutal, but I would expect them to do it.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. Right, well, look, we've had a massive announcement this weekend. I will take no glory in saying that I told you the fight had never happened, but John Jones has retired. He's also allegedly crashed a car and left an half-naked woman in it whilst pissed up. I don't know whether that's got anything to do with it. Well, that's what the reports say.
Dana White says.
John Jones, man. The fuck? One of the greatest mixed martial artists to ever grace the cage, the octagon, has just been shrouded in controversy, PED test failures, drug taking. All this is alleged. Well, no, it's not. All this is documented. Domestic violence. Just why did he fucking drag this out for 18 months? I will say this. I'm a massive John Jones fan, but I'm also a massive Tom Aspinall fan, right? And that's why I didn't want to see the fight, because I just didn't want to see either of them lose to either of them, because I love them both, right? But I don't think John Jones is scared of Tom Aspinall.
No.
What I think John Jones is worried about is losing. And I've separated the two. I don't think there's a man on this earth that John Jones is actually physically scared of, but I think he also knows that he has his limitations, and we've seen the gap get smaller every time he's fought, haven't we? It's got smaller and smaller and smaller. All right, the Stipe was 42. Cyril Gane, he took him down. Cyril Gane has no one-punch knockout power and no ground game, right? Tom Aspinall will probably do exactly the same thing to Cyril Gane, who I believe will be his next fight.
It's looking that way, isn't it?
But I'd said, didn't I? I didn't think this fight was going to happen. I'm just pissed off that John Jones dragged us all along on this bullshit ride for 18 months. I'm disappointed in the way that it's ended, because I think he's tarnished his legacy. I think if he'd have done this 18 months ago, won the belt, beat Stipe and retired, I don't think we'd be talking about it the way we are now. There's a lot of people, now focusing on his PED test failures that weren't focusing on those before. There are people that are, saying he's not as good as what he was, and he lost to Reyes, and just shite, mate. Because John Jones is up there.
After-timers. Look, I'm not as big a John Jones fan as you are, but I do have a lot of respect for him and everything he's achieved. But I am very much a Tommy Aspinall fan, and I've banged the drum even before I started doing this stuff that we are going to get a heavyweight champion in the UFC from England, and it's going to be Tommy Aspinall. I said that before the Blades fight, when he unfortunately had that horror injury, and everything he's done since. John Jones, unfortunately, if he's afraid of losing, that's fair enough. However, if he retired in the aftermath of the Stipe fight, his legacy remains intact. I actually think he's done more damage to his legacy by what he's spent all this time doing so far in 2025 than what would have happened if he just fought Tom and lost, if that makes sense. Now, I know that's a weird statement, but to say everything he said, that all the allegations that have come out, I know they're not related to fighting, but all this stuff to come out, you could bet your bottom dollar half the stuff that's come out about John this year wouldn't have surfaced if either he retired or he said he was going to fight Tom. Do you see what I mean? There's always a way to keep things relevant. Look, regardless of his extracurricular activities, shall we say, when John Jones was in the octagon, straight down the middle, mate. When John Jones was in the octagon, he was a joy to watch. Not so much so in his last two at heavyweight, because Cyril Gane shat himself and was like a rabbit in the headlights, and Stipe looked like a man who'd been sliding down a fireman's pole and putting out fires for 2.5 years. That's the reality. Yes, okay, he beat the men in front of him.
That was a euphemism, by the way.
Yes, he beat the men that were in front of him. But the caveat is that Gane froze, and Gane has come out recently, hasn't he, and admitted that he froze in that moment, taking on the great John Jones. And Stipe, fuck me, just never should have been in there after how long he was out for. So the light heavyweight John Jones will go down in the top 1, top 2, top 3, you know, depending on where you sit on the fence. It's just a shame, unfortunately. Like you say, people are now focusing on his misdemeanors or things that he got away with in his fighting career as opposed to the legacy he has. But now, Tom Aspinall averages less than 5 minutes of octagon time in the UFC. You've got a heavyweight champion now in a division that has been held up by the John Jones shenanigans for 18 months. Even though he's fought twice, it has been held up by his shenanigans. Get him out. Like you say, Cyril Gane looks to be the next one.
Paris, I think.
Yeah, they're talking about doing that in Paris in September. That's fine. However, if the other rumor I've heard is they're going to delay it for Abu Dhabi, then that's the end of October. If it's September and Tom comes through it within the first 10 minutes, get him out on the end of year Vegas show in December. Do you see what I mean? You need to associate the heavyweight division now with the new champion, because the whole build up to Tom's first fight, you know what it's going to be like. You're only the champion because John didn't want to fight. You're not a proper champion. So the sooner that the UFC can get Tom Aspinall his maiden title defense, even though it's his first time fight, the better it is for him, because we know how good Tom Aspinall is. We believe has the potential to rule at the top of this division for a decent amount of time. But it's not going to do him any good now when he's already not fought since July of last year. We're at the back end of June. It's going to be over a year by the time he gets out again. But the narrative is going to be, you're the champion because John's retired. You don't deserve the belt. Let him prove that he deserves the belt.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. I think they're going to make the Poatan fight at some stage. I don't want to see it because I think he smashes him to pieces. I don't think Potan's big enough for heavyweight. I think light heavyweight's his peak. But do you think they'll make that fight?
This exact week next year for International Fight Week?
Yeah, because I know we've got a big fight card next week, but International Fight Week's come around with a bit of a whimper, don't you think?
Yeah.
And
that was going to be my next point.
Because it used to be Friday, Saturday.
Yeah.
Do you remember they used to have things like the Ultimate Fighter final on the Friday?
Ultimate Fighter finals was always the Friday. Thursday night was Hall of Fame inductees. Friday night. Yeah, it has come around with a bit of a whimper. So I do think we're going to see Aspinall and Poatan. I don't want to see it like you, because Aspinall's too big, too strong, and
too good on the ground.
We'll show up.
People don't realise that. Because Tom's knocking people out, what they don't realise is his dad is a fucking black belt master jiu-jitsu coach. Tom Aspinall has a sick ground game. Absolutely second to none.
And that's where we expose
Poatan. When I said Jones is not scared of the man, do you know what I think's fucked it with him? And I would not be surprised if he comes out of retirement after he's seen somebody like what's the Brazilian heavyweight called? Almeida. Right. I think somebody like Almeida could give Tom rounds. And I think if we see Tom taken into second, third, and fourth round, and there's more data on him, I think Jones will come out of retirement. I think it's the fact he hasn't got data and Tom is an unknown entity, and that's what's worrying John about losing.
I just don't. But I agree with you. But I don't think there's anyone really that I can see taking Tom past 15 minutes in a moment. I don't think Cyril Gane will do it. Poatan, if it goes to ground, definitely won't do it.
I think Tom will strangle him inside a couple of minutes, I don't think he hits hard enough to knock Tom out either. Tom's been caught Spivak caught him clean on the
30
whiskers.
seconds before.
Didn't even make him take a backward step. The only defeat he's got in the UFC is when he broke his own leg kicking flipping Curtis Blades. Do you know, Tom's a different type of heavyweight. Tom could box. His hands are that good. I think
by his own admission as well, he admits himself that he could be a boxer.
I think he wanted to be a boxer originally. I think that's what, because he was a part of Tyson Fury's training camp at one stage.
Let's just finish off on John Jones. Now he's retired. Stay retired, especially at his age, because otherwise, what are we going to be doing? Sitting here in 5 years' time? All John's saying he's going to fuck off. Look, you've had 18 months to fight the young pretender, because the Tom Aspinall fight was there from
his
the moment
he doesn't get excited by it, which is bollocks, isn't it? He wanted 30 mil, they got him 30 mil, and he's retired.
Yeah, mate, he's retired. He will go down as one of the best to ever get inside a cage.
Yeah.
Leave it at that. He's done enough damage to his legacy by dragging this out. Leave it at that. Don't let Tom, Tom beats Gan and Tom beats Aspinall beats Poatan, and then he's going to come back. No, you're done now, mate. I know. And the thing is, Dana will let him come back. That's the sad thing. We know.
Yeah. He'll let any of them come out. I will say this, though, as a big John Jones fan, that the greatest of all time for me is Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, and number 2 is George St. Pierre. And then I think Jones could get 3, but I think for me, even though I'm a massive fan and I wear my T-shirt all the time, but PED things have to be taken into account, and that's why I don't have Anderson Silva as high. I think the greatest of all time is Demetrius Johnson for what he's done in the UFC and in other organisations outside the UFC. I think GSP, for him being so dominant, losing his belt, regaining his belt, retiring, coming back and choking out somebody in a division above at middleweight, making himself ill to get to middleweight. I love the fact that he dropped the belt and fucking retired after that. Fucking brilliant. Because he promised him he wouldn't do that. But I think John Jones will definitely... No, I think John Jones, PED aside, is a top 5 greatest of all time fighter for me.
So what you've just done with your top 3, I'd swap GSP and Mighty Mouse around marginally and probably have John at 3. But again, for the same reasons, I would rather put John lower down because of the PED stuff. But look, there's no denying what he'd done when that cage was locked and it was him, another man, and an official in there.
Look, the only blemish on his record is the Matt Hamill disqualification, and they've since made 12-6 elbows legal. So technically, that fight result should get overturned because he was beating the absolute dog shit out of Matt Hamill. And if you look, they're not even 12-6. They're sort of from the side.
Yeah,
they're more like 3-9 or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So look, it is what it is. We now have our 3rd British undisputed champion after Bisping and Leon Edwards. So look, we're all aboard. Well, not that we were ever not on board the Tom Aspinall train. I'm excited. Full
steam ahead, mate. Full steam ahead.
It's full steam ahead now that John Jones has retired. Let him sail off into the sunset. I'm done. Liam, is there anything you'd like to add? Any other business before we call tonight's show to a finish?
No, mate. We've literally gone back in time 7 days, danced around a bit and done a bit of news. I think we got it covered. We'll come back, like we say, it's a huge international fight week. We will come back probably tomorrow or Friday with the predictions.
Absolutely. So thanks again for joining me, Liam. Thanks to everybody that's interacted, commented. DJ Pat, Hand History Vault, Mad Mitch TV, Dave over at Rope It Up Boxing. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining myself and Liam. We will see you on the other side of tomorrow.